Hi, my name is Makai.
In the Hoyland Elementary School Library,
I'm Ms. Thompson.
the future of Spring ISD is shaking hands with its past.
Well, thank you.
Hoyland students are interviewing some important people who attended or taught school in Spring ISD long before these second graders were born.
Can you tell us a story about your childhood?
I grew up on a farm, so there were all kind of chores to do.
The event is part of the district's SHAPE program, the Spring Historical Artifacts Project and Experience. Students at the Carl Wunsche Senior High School gathered and cataloged old yearbooks, student newspapers, and other artifacts from past years.
You want to keep up with history, like where your school was created.
Some of the material was sent to Dueitt Middle School, where students examined the items so they can prepare reports on how the school has changed.
What is that?
This is writing ink.
Okay, so can you imagine having to use something like that when you had to write?
The students at Hoyland also looked at some of those materials, and they had some questions.
How many kids were in your class?
When I graduated from high school, there were only 18, and that was in all of spring because there was only one senior class in spring at that time. Well, since I attended school in spring from first grade through 12th, and I taught here for 28 years, that was 28 of my 37 years of teaching, I was invited to come and speak with some of the second graders about spring and how things were when we were growing up.
They came up with a lot of questions that they would like to ask, and then we took it from there and categorized it. Was your question about school? Was it about work? Was it about home life? And they came up with their favorite questions, and we chose 18 questions and put those on note cards for them to ask.
There was no television at all, anywhere.
Ralph Eickenroht started the district's band program more than 50 years ago, and he is the namesake of Eickenroht Elementary. He answered questions about growing up without electronic toys for children who have never known a world without television, computers, or cell phones.
We thought it was great to get to go to the movies. That was a nice thing that we could do maybe once a month or something like that.
It's hard for them to relate back to Spring ISD when we were just a rural community, farmers and things of that nature, and more they're urban dwellers and they're of the electronic age.
Who was the president when you were a kid?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Back when Franklin Roosevelt was president, the Wunsche family donated 13 acres of land to help Spring ISD get off to a good start.
We had two school buses. One of them was called the Spring School Bus, and the other one was called the Bammel School Bus.
The students today are getting a first-hand account of the history of their school district.
Hopefully maybe it'll plant a seed for them that they would want to know the history later on. That would be good.
What kind of books did you read?
I thought maybe it piqued their interest in history, and I thought that was obvious when they began to ask questions and were enthused about it. It probably opened up an avenue that they hadn't even thought about. We didn't have a library like you do, and you had a big choice of books. We had some books from our home that I read, and then of course we had our school books, our textbooks, and that was primarily what we read.
Thank you for taking time off of your day to interview with me.
I'm glad to do it.
I think the whole process allowed our students to put things into perspective. We don't have a chalkboard, we have a smart board, and we're able to use the technology to help us learn. We don't have a dozen books to choose from for our reading selection, but we have thousands, and even some on the computer.
Even though there's a lot of changes, some things are still the same as far as education being important. Some of the elders were answering some questions that really reinforced and encouraged what we're trying to teach right now, that education, reading, all of that is very important.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Whatever has happened in the past does have an effect on what we do in the future, whether they know it or not. Thank you.
From here, these students return to their classrooms to share what they've learned with their classmates. These SHAPE program activities are helping students carry the Spring community's past into the future.
They're going to go a long way.